In politics, promises are everything. They can make or break a candidate's campaign, especially in a country like the United States, where voters expect immediate results. So, when Donald Trump ran for president in 2016 and repeated his promises to bring down costs and make America great again, he tapped into a deep well of frustration among American voters. His approach was simple: blame the elites, the global economy, and foreign countries. He promised to fix everything, fast, through tariffs, trade wars, and by rolling back regulations. But fast forward to today, and the situation has grown far more complex. With less than a month and a half before his potential return to the White House, Trump will soon have to deliver on his promises. And that's when the questions start. Why did he make such lofty claims? How is he going to keep them? And more importantly, what happens when they inevitably fail to meet expectations? There's one promise in particular that seems to be backfiring: Trump's pledge to use tariffs to lower prices for everyday Americans. In fact, tariffs are poised to do the exact opposite of what Trump promised. And if his policies fail to deliver, the consequences will be felt by millions of Americans, no matter their political affiliation. So, as Trump prepares to take office once again, let's take a closer look at the realities of his tariff promises and why, despite his best efforts, the American people might be left holding the bag. 1. The tariff promise: a quick fix for rising prices. When Donald Trump took the stage in 2016, one of his most repeated promises was that tariffs, taxes on foreign goods, would lower the cost of living for American families. During his rallies, Trump told voters that his trade war would drive prices down. He even claimed that basic necessities like groceries, gas, and household items would see a significant price reduction once he implemented his tariffs on foreign imports. However, what Trump failed to mention, and what many of his supporters failed to fully consider, was that tariffs often do the exact opposite of what he promised. Rather than lowering prices, tariffs make goods more expensive. And while Trump has insisted that these tariffs would put American workers first, economists across the political spectrum agree. Tariffs are a hidden tax on consumers. 2. The economic reality of tariffs. At its core, the theory behind tariffs is simple. If you make imported goods more expensive, American companies will have to turn to domestic suppliers, which, in turn, should boost American manufacturing and create jobs. This would theoretically lower the trade deficit and help Americans in the long run. But in reality, tariffs cause inflation, the exact opposite of what Trump promised. For one, the goods that Americans rely on every day, like electronics, clothes, and groceries, are often manufactured overseas. By imposing tariffs on goods from China, Europe, and other trade partners, the cost of those goods rises. Importers and retailers then pass those costs on to consumers, meaning that families have to spend more just to maintain their current standard of living. The worst part? The burden falls hardest on working-class Americans. Higher-income individuals may be able to absorb the price increases, but lower-income families will feel the pinch much more acutely. This is especially concerning when you consider the fact that many Americans are already struggling with high inflation, stagnant wages, and rising housing costs. 3. The immediate backlash: Trump's tariffs and the impact on everyday Americans. Trump's tariffs are already showing signs of failure even before they are implemented. Several major retailers have already warned that they will raise prices in response to new tariffs. Large chains like Walmart, Target, and Home Depot, which rely heavily on imports, will pass on those costs to consumers. Smaller businesses, which often have less ability to absorb higher prices, will have no choice but to follow suit. This price increase won't be short-lived either. Even if Trump claims that the tariffs are temporary or that he'll remove them soon, the effects on prices will linger. The global supply chain is vast, and disruptions take time to reverse. Even with promises of tariffs being rolled back, the market will have already adjusted to higher costs, making it harder to bring prices down again. 4. The Trump supporters who will feel the pain. One of the most frustrating aspects of Trump's tariff policy is that it will hurt the very people who are most enthusiastic about his promises. Many Trump supporters live in rural areas or small towns where jobs in manufacturing and agriculture are scarce. These individuals have been sold the idea that the return of tariffs would resurrect those industries and bring back jobs, but the reality is more complicated. While some jobs and industries like steel and manufacturing might see a short-term boost, many of those jobs are not the ones that will ultimately benefit from the tariffs. Instead, it is the big corporations and multinational companies that will adjust most easily to new tariffs, while small businesses and working-class families will bear the brunt of the cost increases. And here's the kicker. Trump's trade wars won't just hurt rural Americans, they'll hurt everyone. From the small business owners to the suburban families, Trump's tariffs will squeeze wallets across the board. And while he's already planning to increase tariffs on China, Europe, and other countries, these moves could lead to retaliatory tariffs, further exacerbating the problem. 5. The false promises of lower prices. In order to win over moderate voters, Trump promised that tariffs would lower prices on everyday goods, from groceries to gas. It's a message that resonated with people struggling to make ends meet. But the sad truth is that tariffs won't lower prices. They will increase them. Even conservative economists have acknowledged this, noting that Trump's tariffs are simply another form of inflation. Moreover, Trump's promises to reduce the cost of groceries and household items were based on wishful thinking. His plans for massive tariff increases on imports are likely to lead to higher costs across the board. As retailers raise prices to absorb the extra costs from tariffs, everyday Americans will see their paychecks stretch thinner and thinner. 6. The trickle-down myth. Why Trump's economic policy won't work. One of the key tenets of Trump's economic policy has been the belief in trickle-down economics, the idea that tax cuts for the rich and big corporations will eventually benefit everyone. However, history has shown us that this approach rarely works. The 2017 tax cuts are a perfect example. At the time, many Republican voters believed that trickle-down economics would finally lift up the middle and working class, but 3 months later, the reality was clear. The promised benefits never materialized. In much the same way, Trump's tariff policies are a repeat of this flawed logic. The idea that tariffs will lower prices for Americans while revitalizing manufacturing jobs is a pipe dream. If anything, the tariffs will exacerbate inequality, hurt small businesses, and leave the average American paying higher prices for basic goods. So, what happens if Trump's tariff policies fail to live up to the hype? For one, there will be a backlash, and it won't just come from Democrats. Even many moderate Republicans will grow disillusioned if prices don't come down as promised. The patience of American voters is short, and they're quick to turn on politicians who don't deliver results. In fact, the political fallout could be severe. While Trump himself won't face re-election, his party will. If Republicans fail to address the economic pain caused by tariffs, they will suffer significant losses in the 2026 midterms. That's when Americans will realize just how bad the consequences of these policies really are. And when the pain sets in, Trump supporters who were once cheering him on might be the first to turn their backs. In conclusion, Trump's tariff promises were based on unrealistic expectations. While he might have convinced many that these policies would bring prices down, the truth is that they are only going to raise prices across the board. The American people are going to pay for it, both in their wallets and at the ballot box. And when that day comes, the people who mocked those of us warning about the consequences will have to live with the aftermath. Trump's broken promises will hurt every American harder than they ever expected.